Well, we're here in the offices of Andries Nkome, the instructing attorney, for this very important matter of the Marikana Massacre, and specifically the concomitant email case with regards to President Cyril Ramaphosa as the first defendant in this case. I'm happy to have Attorney Andries Nkome with me. And Andries, I would like to find out, what is your view about the manner in which the case has been developing this morning, the way in which Advocate Mpofo and the rest of the team have presented the case, and I think then we can proceed to talk about the significance of this case and how you see it unfolding.
Thank you, Mr. NIEHAUS, and I think thank you for the opportunity. I'm very happy with the development of the case, more so in the light of the way Advocate Mpofo is proceeding to argue the matter. He says, in our papers, we've gone on and proven all the elements that needed to be proven so that we can come to a conclusion that says there is liability that needs to befall on the President of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, about his involvement with the lawmen as well as government in 2012 when people died. He says the president at the time was a champion of BEE. He was a director, he was also a shareholder of lawmen. And it's for that reason that he went on to say the only way in which we can change and quell the labor dispute is if we characterize it as a dastardly criminal act. And he goes on to say everybody else knows that the people that were called after this has been characterized as a criminal act were the police and the army. So, in my view, there is all the proofs, all the allegations that need to be there for this case to go on and be on trial. The other side, of course, comes and says they had expected this, they had expected that, they expect another. My understanding is that those are allegations that they needed to only raise at the trial stage, simply because here we just need to be making allegations, and you must accept that those allegations are true. If it's accepted the allegations are true, then the matter must proceed to the next stage.
Can I interrupt you there? Yes. Because it was for me very significant. The manner in which Advocate Mpofo stressed that the actions that were taken that led to the deaths of the people at Marikana can be directly related to this change in understanding of what the matter was all about, that it was not a labor dispute, but a criminal act. And the reason for that, the way in which this was casted, was directly because of the actions of President Ramaphosa, the manner in which he intervened, and the manner in which he then recasted and defined the situation as a criminal act. Do you want to comment further about that?
Yes, we have argued, even in the Farlam Commission of Inquiry, that the one major cause of the massacre was the characterization of the dispute. Because had it remained a mere labor dispute, there was no way in which the police or the army would have come with the TRT to come and try to quell the situation. So it was very, very important for the then director of lawmen to say, this is a dastardly criminal act, and it's for that reason that the police and the army must be called to do what they do best, which is the army is there to protect a nation.
But of course, when you say the then director of lawmen, you don't only refer to a director, you also refer to a very senior politician within the African National Congress who was using his political connections to reach out to ministers and to tell them how they should define and interpret this interpretation.
It has been stated in the court papers that the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, at the time was an NEC member, National Executive Committee member of the ruling party. And he had that position that he could use to influence and exert power and pressure onto the state to say, let's make sure that we use state machinery to go and quell what transpired in Marikana. The one thing I think that came out clearly is that the emails that were communicated were emails that were communicated just a day prior to the massacre happening. So we can conclude that as a result of this characterization, as a result of this, the army had to go and do what they did in Marikana in 2012.
And it wasn't just the police, it was specifically the army. And as Advocate Mpofu said, the army is not there as a peacekeeping force. It is there as a repressive force. It is a force that kills.
Following on the emails that were shared a day prior to the massacre, there was a press conference which was made by the Provincial Police Commissioner, where they were saying this strike action is going to end. Tomorrow it's D-Day. And when probed about what is it that you're seeking to do about the striking laborers, the then commissioner stated that we will not say exactly what's going to happen, but the strike is going to end tomorrow. What we also know is that immediately after that press conference, there had been senior police officers who came out and said that let's order ambulances. And that it was an instruction that was given to the effect that instead of ordering ambulances for what's going to happen tomorrow, the plan is to have you order mortuary vans. So the understanding had been that people are going to be killed. And indeed, yes, that's how it happened.
So the situation that we're faced with now, and in fact I was also talking to Bishop Joe Seoke about it, is that there have been indications in engagements with President Ramaphosa that he is acknowledging in some way or another his role and his involvement. And therefore, there were also talks about him going to apologize. What is your response to that? Because there's been so many talks about apologizing, and yet President Ramaphosa has never apologized properly. He's not gone to Marikana to apologize to the family members of the victims. How does one interpret this kind of response from someone who today is, as far as we know, our president?
This year marks 10 years of the Marikana Massacre. And the president, being the first citizen of the country, is supposed to be the one person that upholds the law and has got the deepest respect for people's lives. Now, for all of this massacre to be trivialized the way that it is, for utterances to be made at the funeral as well as on TV that I'm apologizing only on the basis of the words that I use, in my view, is to have very little respect for people's lives. And I take it that it should not be that we have got to approach courts and argue for the whole day and try to draw out an apology from the president, the first citizen of the country.
I looked at these papers and the dates that one see here, and I see people are commenting also about those dates in social media, and they say that this matter has been on the table since 2015, this particular case as it is developing. And yet, we still to see any proper action being taken even to compensate those victims, the families of the victims of the Marikana Massacre. What does that tell you as a human rights attorney about the state of our society, the manner in which someone like President Ramaphosa behaves, and also what does it tell you about, and I'm sad to say, the political party that I belong to, the liberation movement, the African National Congress, in this situation?
I will tell you now that Marikana happened 10 years back, and that we issued summons for personal liability as well as for liability by lawmen in the same year. Now, the National Minister of Police, the government, has considered liability insofar as what transpired in Marikana. And it's for that reason that this case, insofar as government is concerned, is set down to the 26th of July up until the 19th of August, just for a determination of the amounts that people are supposed to be compensated. Now, when we come to a claim against the president for his personal liability, he raises technicalities, despite the fact that all of this had been considered in front of the Falam Commission. My expectation is that he would have easily aligned himself with the outcomes of processes with government, and he would have then come to a conclusion that says, indeed, yes, there's liability, indeed, yes, there was a toxic collusion, and we should be able to have an atonement the people that are injured and the families of people that have been murdered in Marikana in 2012. I think this stance, in my view, is a stance that says we could try and abuse court processes before we get to a conclusion of a matter. But I'm glad that arguments are being presented the way that they are, and the truth at the end of the day will out. The truth will be out there for everybody to see.
But isn't this, unfortunately, part of the character that we've seen of President Ramaphosa, someone who is never prepared to accept responsibility, someone who's always trying to find technical loopholes in order to escape his own responsibility? And for me, and now I'm talking as a member of the African National Congress, it is deeply disconcerting that my president, who is supposed to lead a national liberation movement, can conduct himself in this way. Listening to what Advocate Dali Mpofu said today, the arguments that he advanced, which I believe are unassailable, one can only come to one conclusion. President Ramaphosa is not competent to be the leader of this country, nor the leader of the African National Congress. Andries, if we conclude here, is there a final message which you, as a human rights attorney, as someone who has been deeply involved with the victims in Marikana, want to convey? And I also want to attach that to what is playing itself out right at this moment on the lawns of the union buildings. There are workers there, people who have demanded basic living salaries, workers who have told President Ramaphosa in Rustenburg that they do not accept his lack of concern for them. In fact, they chased him away. They are now there on the lawns at the union buildings, asking for his intervention, demanding to see him. They've been there for days. He has not as much as even acknowledged their presence. What do you say about all of this, and how in this 10 years, today we find ourselves with a president who ignored the workers who he was supposed to have represented when he was the Secretary General of the National Union of Mine Workers?
The long and short of my observation about the kind of democracy that we today enjoy is essentially that it's been an elite transition. It's been led by people that are sitting comfortably in political offices, but are making sure that they become themselves shareholders of operations that are seeking to suppress the interests of workers. And when one sits in a position such as that, you are precarious and you are conflicted. You cannot be seeking to be talking on behalf of the laborers as the former chairperson of a union. At the same time, you seek to be a shareholder of the very same operations in the pursuance of your own personal interest. And that causes what we now had out of Marikana, a toxic collusion where people are saying, if laborers in Marikana were to go to an operation London to complain, they would not find anyone who would be best able to help them, simply because people that are sitting as shareholders are people that are sitting as politicians, and therefore you will end up with the same result that you ended up with. It's not surprising that today in the papers we have argued for that the conduct as has transpired in Marikana in 2012 should not happen again, but the president seeks to defend even that, and expectation is that a president ought to be saying what transpired in Marikana ought not to have happened. That is, if he did not have had shares within the operations that suppressed the people's interests.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nkome, and thanks for also what you are doing for the people of Marikana and the manner in which you work for justice in South Africa.